Okay, welcome. And we're recording as well for the Wakelet. So today we're going to talk about cross-cultural communication, and we're going to start by exploring our context in Britannica. We're a really diverse community which has a lot of benefits, but also it brings some challenges as well. We'll look at different points of view from different cultures, and we will review kind of misconceptions and misunderstandings that can arise when lots of people from all over the world in different languages and cultures all come together and communicate. So in Britannica we have over 56 different nationalities. A lot of our parent community, the vast majority of our parent community, are speaking English as a second, third or fourth language, and there are lots of
staff members as well.
Yeah,
staff members as well. English is my second language, so Hungarian is the first, then English, and I also speak German as well.
All right. And each culture as well has its own rules, its own conventions, and they're well known to people within the culture, but not from those outside it as well. And it can be when you go outside of your culture that you are even really aware of them yourself as well. Often parents and teachers will talk to each other on the playground, but we use email a lot, and email removes all other cues. So you can't see facial expressions, you can't see gestures, and it's just the words, and they can be open to misinterpretation. And so we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls of that as well.
Yes, I would like to ask you to choose two out of these three pictures. Choose two. Who would you put together? Dog? Carrot. Dog and carrot? Why? What is the connection for dog and carrot?
Dog is very pretty and we love to feed. Carrot is Atlas' best vegetables. That's why. I don't have any relationship with rabbit.
Maybe I didn't ask the question properly. I think, yeah. Which two pictures did you choose that they belong together? And for you, the dog is because pretty, and carrot is because Atlas' favorite vegetable.
Yeah.
Good.
How about you?
Last two, because the rabbits are like carrot.
Yeah. So Morton also asked me this question. I immediately said rabbit and carrot, because the rabbit is the carrot.
Yeah.
And then she was like, dog and rabbit, because both of them are mammals. It's like, yeah, true. And it was really interesting because scientists believe that the Western culture people, the Western people from the Western participants and subjects would choose the dog and the rabbit, and it's more like analytical.
I'm from medium.
You're the special one. You're the special one. Have an extra variable. What my child likes. It's an extra one. It's the mom specialty. And then they say it's a more analytic way of thinking. While the Eastern culture and the Eastern subjects, Eastern participants would choose the rabbit and the carrot because it's more holistic in this way. So none of them are bad, none of them are good. It's a different way of thinking. And I think this really small exercise can actually prove how different we are with even thinking. But with the Hungarians, we had the same way of thinking in this case.
It's well known that some gestures mean different things in different parts of the world. In some places, such as Britain, this means everything's okay, while in Brazil and other places, it's considered obscene. And in still other places, such as Japan, it means money. In Italy, they might make this sign to emphasize a point, while in Jordan, it can mean, wait a second. Certain things often have gestures for them. For instance, in most places where drinking alcohol is popular, there's a sign for drinking or getting drunk. In the US, it's this. While in France, they grab and twist their nose. and in Russia they clit their throat. On the other hand, some places have more or less unique gestures. In Russian, to say you're making things too complicated, you scratch your ear by going around the back of your head. Among the most common and probably oldest gestures are nodding for yes and shaking the head for no. But even this isn't universal. Bulgarians are famous for shaking their head to mean yes and nodding with a click of the tongue to mean no. And in South Asia, they have a third option, which involves tilting the head from side to side. It's used to acknowledge the person speaking to you, although in some contexts it can also mean approval or even uncertainty.
Do you have any specific gestures in Hungary that would be different? I think for drinking we might use the same, but I don't think that we don't use this, we don't use this. Don't use any of these things, I think, in Hungary. I don't think we have anything special. Middle finger, I assume. That would be also censored and not asked to use. But, okay, maybe. In the UK?
Yeah, in the UK then putting up two fingers is a bit like putting up one finger, the
Really?
middle finger. Yeah, because in the wars between Britain and France, like in ancient times or the Middle Ages, then the archers would fire at the French, and then if the French captured the archers, they cut off their two fingers so they couldn't fire the arrow. So the English would taunt the French by putting up their two fingers to say, I still got my fingers.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
The first one was like this.
Yeah?
This is a swear in Turkey.
Really?
Is it?
Yes, it's a swear for men.
Yeah, really interesting. I used to work in Dubai for a summer just to be as a volunteer in a summer camp with children, and we were working with children from India, and that was really difficult because the first time it was before I graduated from university, and it was really difficult for me because all the kids were like this. I didn't know what they mean by that. I didn't know what they mean. Like yes or no, or what they mean. And of course, after a couple of days, I realized it's just basically either a yes or a no, or they're just uncertain. It was just noticing that, yes, I notice you, I understand what you're speaking about, it's all fine. But at the beginning, it was really difficult for me. So it's really interesting how different cultures use different gestures. And if you don't know the meaning, there can be a lot of misunderstanding.
Have you seen this?
No?
Turkey we use to protect from evil eye. It's just for Turkish culture or some Muslim cultures, I guess. This is, you can mention maybe.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Okay, so there are different differences between communication in different cultures. So we were reading through this together and we're just laughing, recognizing our own cultures, because British people can be very indirect. British people rarely will say what they mean directly. They will say a lot of words around and say a lot of things first, and sometimes the meaning can be completely lost if you're speaking to a non-British person. It's very, very indirect.
I worked in the school for 9 years, and it took me a lot of years to actually understand this kind of approach with communication. And I was like, just say what you mean. Just come on, just do it. And on the Hungarian side, you can see that we are quite direct. We can be quite direct without any, I don't know, covering or it can be quite mean or sound mean sometimes as well, I believe, if you're too direct. But from our side, I'm only speaking from my personal point of view, not for all the Hungarians, that I think it's just sometimes we are quite direct without being mean or trying to be harmful.
I think if you're a British person and somebody is very direct to you, it can feel like, oh my gosh, it can feel very unsettling because you're just not used to it at all. And I think when I first left England, I was 25, and I found it very, very difficult when people were very direct with me. I thought I took offence. I thought they were being rude. I became upset. And then after a while, I realised that actually my culture was totally indirect and that actually other cultures are not like that at all. And now I understand the different ways of communicating, and when somebody is direct with me, I don't take it personally. I don't feel upset at all, but it just took an awareness of that as well. I can give you an example of how indirect British people can be as well. When I lived in China, we used to get the school bus, or the teachers used to get the school bus, and one of the Chinese teachers used to get these baozi, and they're like a bread filled with meat and gravy, and she used to eat it on the school bus. Now these are delicious, but in the morning on the school bus, it used to fill the bus with the smell of meat and gravy and garlic, and it used to make me feel not so good. And other people were like, oh, that smell on the bus, I wish you wouldn't eat it on the bus. Nobody said anything, but people started saying, what's that smell? They said, shall we open a window? That's how indirect. Nobody actually said anything to her until another Chinese person said, is that bothering you? After like days and days of this. And she just said, can you not eat it on the bus? Can you eat it when you get off? Because people don't like the smell. She said, okay. But we'd spent days talking about, I wonder what that smell is, rather than being direct. That is, I mean, it sounds silly, but to a British person, you'd be very anxious saying something directly like that. You leave all these hints and clues instead.
I had to learn how to use hints and clues in my emails and in my communication. Face to face, I still, I think, too direct in this case. In my email, I'm getting better. Now.
British people can be quite reserved as well. They can be not so expressive or not share feelings quite so readily as other cultures do.
I think from the Hungarian side, we do share more personal information, even more easily with other people that we don't even know. We would share easier how we feel and what we actually feel. It was difficult for me at the beginning because how are you questioned? I would answer it. I would answer it how I'm feeling. I genuinely, oh, I had such a bad night, I couldn't sleep at all, and they were like, okay, I actually didn't care about it, thank you. So it's been more, I think, easier, these personal information.
For a British person, you would just say, hi, how are you? And the only answer if you're in England is, fine, thank you. But if you were outside of England and someone starts answering honestly, you're like, wow. Yes. In the UK, you would use a handshake greeting. It's not such a tactile kind of culture.
I think our tactile greetings actually has been phasing out since COVID, but I do remember that we did have the kissing on the cheeks, especially for family members, even for friends, or even if you just get to know someone. Hello, nice to meet you, and 2 kisses. I think this...
2 kisses?
Yeah, 2 on the side.
Some countries use 3 kisses also.
Yeah. But I think this one is phasing out. I think after COVID, we stopped using this. Even a handshake is a bit more like taking a step back and just hi, or just like do a fist bump. So
I think I was talking to my husband about this, and he was talking about how he actually feels quite anxious when somebody does the kisses, because he doesn't know what to do, and he messes it up, and actually he met a Mexican friend who did the air kisses, and he got anxious and kissed on the cheek and then bumped with the nose, and then was just, oh my goodness, can we just handshake? So it's a lovely greeting, but for somebody who's not familiar with it.
Or being comfortable with it, because I think if you actually get too close to a person with that.
Yeah. British people tend to be cynical about motives, cynical about everything really. They're cynical in the press with each other. That's more of a cynical approach.
And we are quite pessimistic. I think we always see the bad things about things. We tend to wait for the worst to happen. We are preparing for the worst to happen. Some people explain this because of the history, because of what happened previously. So we're always preparing for the worst. So otherwise you cannot be surprised or you're not going to be challenged as much because you are preparing for every bad scenario. It's not always a good way of thinking, but I think it's more common than being optimistic and just rightful about the future in Hungary.
British people tend to be quite open to the unknown, fine with trying new things.
Hungarians, not as much. Of course, there are huge individual differences, but I think it's mainly that we try to avoid anything which is unknown. My husband especially, he is like, everything should be safe in the same way because then it's safe, predictable. Unknown can be bad, unknown can be dangerous, so I just stick with the one that we know actually.
British people are very famous for being monolingual and not speaking any other languages, and when the traditional stereotype of a British person is going on holiday to Spain and then arriving and speaking loudly and slowly in English, not making any attempt to speak any Spanish at all, and then complaining that in Spain, if they meet a Spanish person who doesn't speak English, that is the stereotype of the worst British tourist. And sadly, there are cases where it's very true.
Yeah, I think we have in Hungary we have more languages now. Of course, in the city we have, I think every second person at least will speak English now. If you go a bit further to the countryside, maybe it's not the case, but we do have more languages than just the Hungarian because we have to, we need to, because no one speaks Hungarian.
Russian is so common, I guess, in Hungary because of the history. Russian. I couldn't meet with so much people who can speak very well English in Hungary, even in city center. But I mean the older people, but the young Hungarian people use English, most of them.
Yes.
Older people.
And the older generation, they had Russian.
Older generation had Russian and French. I heard some French speakers.
German was quite common as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, in high school and in primary schools, we had always, from my age, when I started primary school, English or German. My mom, they had Russian in the primary school and in the secondary school.
Okay, so when teachers and parents communicate, there are all kinds of different problems that can occur. The main one is going to be language and not being able to speak fluently the same language, or have words having slightly different meanings, or the way that idioms that are used, for example, and turns of phrase that are not very easily translatable. Those things can get in the way of communication. Sometimes, I was talking earlier about being, first of all, if someone was very direct with me, I was upset by it and thought it might be rude. Well, perhaps directness could cause offence. I think most of our teachers are quite international, and I think that they would not take offence by someone being direct. But it's something that could happen. But sometimes indirectness can cause confusion because you just don't actually know what the person is saying, what they mean. We looked earlier at gesture and how different gestures has different meaning in different cultures, and sometimes it can be misinterpreted between different cultures as well. And a main issue really is we might assume that we are all the same. Our own culture is embedded within us, and we may not even be aware of it until we go outside of our culture. And there is an assumption that our understandings are shared understandings, because when we're in our culture they are. but when we're outside of our culture, they're not. And as long as we don't have the assumption that everybody knows what we mean, then that's the first step in avoiding problems from happening.
It's a bit of being ethnocentric, not in a bad way, but always thinking of how you're thinking. Others will also think in the same way, and you assume they also have the same understanding of different things. And if something is different, then you would think, okay, that may be not even normal. And of course, it's a bigger stereotypical thinking in this way, but that can be one of the issues in this case. Yes. It can be really interesting. And we were doing this beforehand, how the British and how the Hungarian people actually have these noises for the animals. And we can also ask the Turkish way.
Because we thought these were hilarious, and then we were talking with some children about it as well. And
so what noise the dog make in Hungarian? And I said to Ms. Morton, it's wow wow. So wow wow. My daughter she's 2 years old, but now she's speaking in sentences. But beforehand, she was just stating wow wow instead of saying it's a dog. How in Turkish. Very good.
Woof woof.
Yeah, woof woof.
Woof woof.
Cat.
Meow.
Yeah, meow as well.
Meow.
Horse.
I don't remember how horse make noise.
We had two options in Hungarian because my cousin's son is also around 2 years old, and then his mom taught him to say, but I taught to my daughter niha. So totally different things, because that is the way how they walk, and the niha, the noise that they make when they are, I don't know, talking.
In England we would say nay, but Evie used to say nihaha because she went to Virgin, and I was like, what's this? What's a nihaha?
Yeah. How about the pig?
They don't have pigs in Turkey.
Well, for us it's
Yeah, same as in the UK. But
or ruff ruff.
You also say oink.
Yeah, or ruff ruff for us, ruff ruff. Yeah. A rooster.
What's rooster?
Like
The
chicken?
male hen.
A male chicken? A
Chicken.
Yeah.
The male chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, the male chicken. In Hungarian, yeah, quite similar. We have kukuriku.
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
Cock-a-doodle-doo. It sounds much funnier though. And the frog.
Quack, quack, quack.
Brekeke.
I think that's really funny. In the UK you say rabbit.
Rabbit. Why would you say rabbit? Rabbit is like an animal.
No, not rabbit, rabbit. Because you have to go rabbit, rabbit.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. A cow, I think it's quite the same everywhere. Yeah, moo. Yeah. And the snake? Yes.
Hiss.
Yeah. So as just pointing out with this really funny exercise how even the animal noises are different in every culture. So we cannot assume that people from different cultures will think in the same way or speak in the same way as we are from our culture, because even how the animals are making noises are so different in these three different cultures and in this room already.
Okay, now we have a job for you.
We use the same language in all around the world, but sounds coming different to our brain or ears, I guess.
Yeah.
So we have. So first of all, do you want to do it?
Yes. Thank you.
First of all, we have to draw a house.
You are drawing house?
Yep. Yeah. Okay, are we done? Aha!
Good.
Oh, we all draw pretty much the same.
Our small experiment actually is working out. Our house is quite similar.
Yeah. Oh, I've got smoke coming out my chimney as well. This actually looks a bit like my mum's house.
Also, to snow, your shelter, what is that? Shelter?
Yeah?
The shelters are made by this
Yeah.
in Hungary. So you learned in the early ages like that.
This is how the house will look like. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
All right. Next, we have to draw a fence.
Fence. That's difficult.
That's nice.
Like a wooden wall.
Wooden wall.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever drew a fence before.
I don't think I've ever drawn it before. No.
I have no idea.
Ah.
Continues like
Ah,
that.
yeah. They're a little different. Okay, next we draw a dog.
Well, that's gonna be embarrassing.
I cannot draw the dog.
Can I have a dog face or your body?
It's up to you. Either one is fine.
I cannot draw the dog.
I've just discovered that I cannot either.
I will draw the cat. I'm better in cats.
Yours looks like a monkey.
Sorry. It does look like a monkey.
It's like a monster. I'm so sorry.
That's like a dog, okay. It's like a fox.
Yeah.
Ah, actually, mine looks quite similar to yours.
All of them are very pretty. Mine is monster.
Mine is a monkey.
Wolf dog.
Okay, so next is a cat.
Interesting. You always need to draw cats now. My daughter is like, draw a cat, draw a cat.
I'm so sorry for that.
It's a really strong cat.
I love it.
Like a bulldog. It's not a good reference.
Okay, next, draw a horizon.
Horizon.
Yeah.
Shall I check on the translate?
It's where the land meets the sky, so the distance where the...
Ah, okay. is that?
Yeah.
Turned out to be not so good in a way.
Huh. Okay, last one is draw the sun. All the same.
Yeah.
Some things we are similar, some things we are really different. Yeah. I think one of the point of doing the exercise is that actually when, depending on where in the world you grew up, then a house would look very different, a bridge would look very different, a road would look very different, and so when we asked to draw something from a common object, it might look a little different depending on where in the world we grew up. And here are just some examples on the screen of different landscapes. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at some of the reasons then for cross-communication. So one of the reasons that people might misunderstand and misinterpret each other, we've touched on this before, is that we assume that we are the same and that we have a shared understanding of how to approach things, the words used, the mannerisms, the approach. And actually, we don't. We all have sometimes very subtle differences in how we approach things. I think when I lived in Thailand or when I lived in China, then it was very different. It was very obvious that there were very different cultural norms and different things to learn. When I came to Hungary, it seemed more familiar and it seemed more the same as the UK, and it's only after a while I thought, oh, that's different, and actually the assumption of similarity can actually get in the way of understanding sometimes.
Yes, as you mentioned, it can be actually in a way that you have this tendency to think the others are thinking in the same way as you are. And it's really interesting because in psychology, I'm teaching psychology as well, we have these different theories how we define what abnormal is. And they had this idea, it's a bit out of concept, but they had this idea that if you are not on the average, if you're a bit of different, you would assume to be abnormal. And I asked the students, so is this a good definition for abnormal? And they were like, yeah, it's fine. So I was like, so just because you have a higher IQ, it means that you're abnormal? It's like, no, I'm special, I'm really awesome. Like, well, this definition means that if you are not on the average scale, not only having 100% IQ, 100 points, then you're gonna be abnormal if you are 99 or 130. Both ends are going to be abnormal. It's a bit of out of concept, a bit of out of the communication, but actually stating that just because something is a bit different, someone is thinking a bit differently, or have a different way of communication, doesn't mean it's not good. But we have this assumption that we are all thinking in the same way, we are all similar in the same way. So if we can take a step back from this assumption and look at other people in a way that, okay, it's different, but there's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing normal with that, then we can reduce the issues with communication or having any kind of hard feelings or bad feelings in this case.
I think it's safe to assume that we are thinking differently.
Yeah, exactly.
I think obviously language difficulties is an obvious one when you are not fluent in a language or it's a second or third or fourth language. But even if you are first language English, for example, we have Australians and Americans, South Africans, you get Canadians and everybody from people from New Zealand all have English as a first language, but some of the words and phrases used can have completely different meanings, even when you're all speaking the same first language, and there can be confusion. And sometimes we have various members of staff who are married. One partner is from the UK and the other partner is from the US, and they laugh about the different word suite that they use and the misunderstandings that can arise because they don't have that shared understanding as well. And I think you were in Hungary.
We also have this in Hungary. My husband is from near Balaton, from that side of the area in Hungary. I'm coming from the northeast of Hungary, so we have many different words that we're using differently. And he has no clue sometimes when I'm saying different ways and different words. And we even have arguments that what you said is something in English, like, yeah, but this is what I meant, because it's what the word meaning for me. So we even had arguments at the beginning of a relationship, because we had two different words, but we actually had the same meaning, just we didn't know the meaning of this is the same for us. So even in between the country, you would have different words for different things.
Not only the words, cultures and behaviors, the way of and lifestyles are completely different in Turkey, also from west to east. If you have met with any people, Turkish people from west, it will be very, very difficult for them, difficult behaviorship. And from east is completely different. You can think about that they are from different countries.
Yeah.
So we can also misinterpret each other's non-verbal communication as well. So the way the gestures we use, the way we express ourselves, the amount of eye contact used can mean respect or disrespect, but the amount of eye contact used would have different meanings in different cultures as well. And things that we've talked about in the video as well. The nodding your head is yes, but in Bulgaria it's no. We have Bulgarians in our community, and this is having a shared understanding that we are different.
Yeah, just remembering that we are different and not taking any personal attacks or taking it as personal bad feelings towards if someone is thinking differently or doing differently.
I think this is what we're again referring to the assumption of similarity. But when we evaluate others' behaviour, when we try and interpret it, when we try and figure out what it means, then there's a danger of evaluating from our own cultural viewpoint only, and not considering why they are behaving or saying what they're saying from their own point of view, which might be very different to ours. This is having high anxiety. I'm going to put it back on. In communicating with somebody outside of your culture, outside of your mother tongue, can cause quite high anxiety. Wondering if you're going to understand, wondering if you're going to be understood, and wondering if you are going to be misunderstood can actually cause quite a high anxiety within our community. So being aware of that as well is quite important.
We have a few of students that they come to our school and they don't speak any English. And especially from Asian cultures, they would not even say a word until they are perfect within English. So we had to see this as not an issue, but rather it's just like a slowing process with how they are understanding, because immediately we would like to interfere, try to give them as much support as possible, but basically what we can do in these cases is just give them time, because this is how they feel better, because they will feel anxious and stressed if they cannot express themselves perfectly in English, if it's not their first language. I think it's mainly coming from, in a way, how perfectionist and maximalist they are, in a way, so we need to respect this as well and give them time before they can actually express themselves.
I think understanding that different cultures have a different approach. Some cultures are absolutely fine to just make a lot of mistakes and it doesn't matter, whereas other cultures are quite reserved about making mistakes and don't want to. They would rather be silent and not say anything at all, and making sure our teachers are aware of that, and that there's this child and they're not saying anything at all yet, and you have to say, well, that's fine, that's just
because they cannot or not, they don't want to, but in a way that they would not make any mistakes, and for that they rather not speak anything at all.
Okay, so here are some tips for avoiding misinterpretations and cross-communication. So avoiding slang is important, trying to use words that are easily translatable, that are not specific to a region or a dialect, not using words that that are not widely, or maybe have multiple meanings, ideally. And also speaking slower than you normally would to another native speaker would be a good tip.
It's really interesting to avoid closed questions, because it's in some cultures it's really rude to say no to a question, but I just realized as well that it's also rude to ask questions as well in the British culture. So when you're phrasing the email, you need to phrase it in a way that it's more indirect, but actually would like to have an answer, but it's really difficult to phrase it in a way, because for me, I would just ask purely, what do you mean? What do you want? But then that can sound too direct and too mean in this way. So using more open-ended questions or just emphasizing to answer to this kind of sentence can be also better, because then you can avoid misunderstandings.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, I remember when I first lived in Thailand, I used to ask directions from people. If I wanted to, this is before Google Maps, I just go and say, could you tell me the way to wherever? And I get sent on all these different directions, and then I found out it's actually rude to say you don't know. And they didn't want to say they didn't know, so they would send me in circles. They say it's that way, it's that way, and I'd be like, but I just got sent the other way. So yeah, try and avoid humour, especially sarcasm. Some cultures, the British culture, loves a bit of sarcasm, but it generally doesn't go down well outside of the UK. Apart from Australia, they like sarcasm there. But even if we went to America, for example, and were sarcastic there, that would not go down very well. It wouldn't be understood, might cause offence, and it's easily misunderstood, especially when there's a language barrier as well. Do you have sarcasm in Hungary? Do you use it?
I think we do. I think we're using it. I think we're using it quite often. Or maybe we are more ironic as well. Yeah. Being pessimistic and ironic and sarcastic at the same time. Good combination. Good combination.
Being supportive and patient is just really the advice that will see
life.
Through. Yeah. Everyone's doing their best to communicate. I think everyone really has good intentions when they're trying to reach out outside of their community and they're trying to communicate with you. And so being supportive and patient and appreciating the differences and seeking to understand will help. Listen to understand and realise that actually your assumptions and your culture cannot be applied to other people. Look for meaning. Sometimes when we just look at face value, we're only using our own assumptions, I think. So you kind of have to think a bit more deeply and look for meaning and accept that we are all different. Yeah.
This is what we are teaching to our students as well. And I think our students are quite good in this, with all these kind of differences, because we have this built in from year one, from day one, that we are all different and there's nothing wrong with that. So by the time they are in year 4, 5, 6, when I have a question like, what would you think if someone would be coming in pink hair? They would be like, I don't care if she likes pink hair or he likes pink hair. I don't care about it because we're all different. Do what you would like to do until you're hurting anyone with that. So accepting these kind of differences, I think it also goes with the communication as well, different cultures.
It's funny because we were talking about this a couple of days ago, and we were saying actually our children don't have these kind of cross-cultural communication issues. They just don't. They grow up in this environment where they can see everyone is different, and they do realise that from a very early age. And actually, being in an international environment is so good for children. It makes them so open-minded and accepting of difference, and they don't make assumptions about their own culture and apply it to other people. They realise from a very early age that everybody has a different perspective, and they don't have these issues, and they will never have these issues. So it's a beautiful thing. So don't assume, always ask questions, seek to understand, and don't just assume that somebody has bad intentions, because they very likely don't. It's a misunderstanding. Ask for feedback about your own communication as well, especially when it's face to face and you might see someone like, what did I do?
Yeah. Just be open-minded. Be open-minded in this case. Yeah.
Okay, so this is our final checklist. And so, I can't remember what we were going to say about this one.
I thought this one was the other one. The one we previously had. It's really similar.
Oh yes, so this is basically what we did.
It's just a summary of the communication checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean everything from knowing that there's culture attached to language, and that even when you're speaking the same language, words can have different meanings. And then verbal tracking as well, looking at what the words that people are saying, and checking in for meaning, and being patient, listening for understanding, using the tone of voice. In some cultures where tone is used as part of the language, like a Chinese or Thai, for example, are very tonal languages, then they may not change their tone within a sentence for meaning, whereas in the UK and in English you would, and the tone of your voice would change the meaning of a sentence.
I think it's in the Hungarian culture as well. If you change the tone, that would mean a different thing. In this, if you raise your voice a bit, or if you raise your tone a bit, then it would have a different meaning, a different sending information in this case.
Cultural rules are pragmatic. Some situations are high context. So when you're face to face, for example, there are lots of clues and cues that you can take from the way that their facial expression, their gesture, their tone of voice, all of these things you can take meaning from. But an email or even a phone call sometimes, where you start to remove some of the context, then it can be harder to understand than just being aware of how. I think when, as teachers, we would rather often speak face to face than an email or even a phone call, because it's easier to understand each other when we are face to face. There's much more context available. All right, do we have any questions?
We learned from different cultural traits.
I think the main message of this whole workshop is that accepting that we're all different, and accepting that we have different cultures, and even in between the cultures we have different understanding from different meanings and words and tones. So I just being open-minded and acceptant and patient towards others is the main key. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.